Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. And this is the third edition of Growth Show. Super proud to get this going. Definitely. Thanks to the internal team like as Keetna, Ilanjarian, Vishnu. The team has been involved constantly and making sure this show has been running in a successful manner. Having said that, myself Praveen, and I'm the co-founder of Pipe Rocket Digital. It is a B2B SaaS marketing agency, and currently we work with clients like DevRev, Storyline, Metrics team for more than 12 months consistently. And our core principle is very specific. Just stick to fundamentals when the market is very shabby, and that has led to provide significant pipeline growth quarter on quarter for our clients, and we have been able to do that consistently for our clients as well. Getting into the show, this show we would like to touch base on the US market, especially because when talking about the US market, people would be telling about SEO, PPC, events. These are the predominant items would be touch base whenever when we wanted to get into the US market. But there are a lot of other nuances involved whenever we touch about the buyer's journey. And when considering that, I think there is no other better person than Pritesh Vora. He has done for multiple clients on multiple stages. And one thing which stood out from him is it's his clarity. The reason why I'm strongly saying that, I just witnessed that in the Google event where he was clearly mentioning about what are the parameters that needs to be viewed whenever we are going into the US market, and that gives me a lot of confidence. And we had a conversation internally, why not we have a separate session as a growth show. He was very kind enough to accept our invite, and that's how we are into this show. Thank you so much, Pritesh, and we are super happy to have you in this show. And yeah, over to you.
Thanks, Praveen. You guys are too kind uh, for that intro, but I'm just happy to be here. And will try and share what I can.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll start with the customary intro for folks who do not know me, and then cover what we are going to cover in this session. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Pritesh Vora, and I like to think of myself as a revenue engine builder. I've spent about 15 years in B2B SaaS, the last 10 plus leading growth and marketing for startups. I started as an engineer, moved into business development, then founded a startup called uninstall.io, which was later acqui-hired. After that, I led growth and marketing at BlogVault Malcare, where we grew 8x. And most recently, I spent the last 4 years at Sprinto as their VP marketing and growth. Sprinto is a compliance automation SaaS company. At Sprinto, I joined when their ARR was well under $500,000 and helped them scale it into multi-tens of millions today. Marketing and growth were responsibly for majority of the pipeline there, and I built the entire GTM engine end to end, from demand gen, events, product marketing, SDR, BDR, motion, partnerships, plus the underlying ops and analytics. Today, what I'm about to talk is bringing you lessons from the last 2 years that I spent on the ground in US. As part of Sprinto, I moved to US with one primary mandate: figure out new segments and accelerate growth in US, especially in mid-market and then lower enterprise. And not just scrape by in growth, but to win. That was the mandate. And here's what I realized very quickly. When you're sitting in India, Europe, the US GTM looks very familiar on paper for mid-market and enterprise, right? You read the same playbooks, follow the same LinkedIn advice. And generally the advice is like, do PLG, do content, do events, do outbound. And it's so easy to think, cool, I have the playbook. I can hire a couple of people, send some sequences, and we are off. But when you actually try to build a US motion, try to see what the response is, that the market basically says, cute, but no. I mean, don't get me wrong. You do get some replies, you get some deals, but nowhere close to the speed or quality that you expected. And you get a lot of, oh, this feels promising. but that never turns into real pipeline momentum. And you know what's the weird part? You're not doing anything wrong in that, right? You're doing all the things according to the playbook, but you're still not winning. You are present, you are in the game, but you're not the one bending the field. And at some point, it hit me. We're all using the same visible playbooks. And the difference between growing a bit and actually winning comes from the invisible rules, the stuff that's never on a slide. Things like how trust is actually formed, how people really read what you're saying, what value means to a US buyer, what gets you remembered versus completely ignored, you know, and how much of this is shaped by the culture and context, not just funnels and tools. So 2 years on ground in the US compressed what would have taken me personally 5 or more years remotely. So today, I want to share some of those invisible rules with you in this session. I want to make a disclaimer here. So this is not another 10-step US GTM plan session. If you're here for that, I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint you. I feel there are dime a dozen 10-step US GTM playbooks online, which, you know, anyone can search online. I can happily share later. But what we are going to talk here are the invisible underlying fabric that really helps you move the needle in the US market. And we are going to talk about what really decides whether you grow a bit or actually win in US mid-market and enterprise, the invisible rules. Okay, so let's talk about what are we going to cover today. I've tried to aggregate the invisible rules into 5 core pillars, and I'm going to walk you through those 5 core pillars. The first, GTM realities, how the game actually behaves on ground. The second, trust and relationships, the human layer that does not show up in your dashboards. The third, communication rules, how they process what you say, write, communicate. The fourth, positioning and value, what they really buy. And the last, culture and buyer mindset, the operating system under everything that we do in US. Okay, so if I'm able to do this right today, you will likely walk away with a set of invisible rules that you can plug into the next 90 days in your GTM motion, and hopefully a few lines that stick in your head the next time you're trying to write that email or trying to book that flight to the Bay Area. Okay, on that note, let's jump in. And before we do that, I want to again call a disclaimer. I'm trying to cover a lot of what I've learned in the next 30 odd minutes. So we may not be able to go in depth with everything, but I'll try to cover as much as possible. And I'm happy to answer any queries that may come along. Okay, so let's start with the first pillar, the GTM realities. Not the LinkedIn version of what we see there, but how the game actually behaves when you're on the field. So for each of the pillars, the way I'm structuring it, what are those invisible rules for each of these pillars? Okay, so the first invisible rule in GTM reality is GTM always works in thresholds, and they are not in straight lines. Most of us would like to think this. We did one event, we got nothing. We did 2 events, got nothing. And so events don't work. Or there's a lot of money that's going in events, but they don't work. But on ground, what I kept seeing was something very different. You show up once, nobody's going to notice. Show up twice, nobody remembers. But you keep showing up consistently 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, and suddenly people go, oh yeah, I've seen you guys around. Same logo, same product, same you. What really changed? You crossed a perception threshold. You started to become one of them. So below a certain threshold, you are invisible. Above it, the market starts believing you are everywhere. And that's the first rule. So most teams usually, I've seen, quit one step just before that threshold and aren't able to see the results. So you're not necessarily, you're not winning. Maybe it is because your execution is bad. No, you're often not winning because you quit right before you become visible. Okay, so the second rule, and it's very widely talked about, The US GTM is fairly messy under the hood, and that seems to be absolutely okay. From far away, it always looks like you need perfect positioning, perfect website, perfect brand, perfect PLG, perfect everything. And only then you are allowed to sell in the market. That's the belief that we work with. But on ground in the Bay Area, like I saw teams scaling some serious numbers, startups doing some serious scale with absolutely messy decks, half baked marketing, and ad hoc ops like uh, that you've not seen, and they are yet able to scale to some serious number. But there was one key difference that I saw, which was a very deliberate motion. They were going after a segment that they understood, channels that they were committed to, and they had enough volume to cross that visibility threshold. So the learning here was that you don't need a perfect brand to create motion, and we should get away with that excuse that we keep saying only if we had a perfect brand, we would run the market like anything. You just need a motion that actually runs. And trust me, you can't A/B test your way into momentum from our Figma files. Okay, moving on to the third rule. There's another reality that hit me, uh, but only after some time on ground. Now, US is one place where you can go really narrow and still go big. Sitting here, we always feel the pressure to be an end-to-end player because the home market is smaller. But out there, the market is so big that you can say, you know, you can uh, generally say, we only care about, I'm just giving an example, we only care about RevOps leaders at B2B companies between 200 to 1,000 people who use Salesforce and one of these three tools. And that's still a massive opportunity. So what I've seen is the teams that move fastest there, they stop trying to be for everyone in the US. They pick one lane inside, they pick one lane to get started with, design all their events, messaging outbound around that wedge. Now, you really don't need a bigger ICP to start with. You just need a sharper ICP with enough depth. And the US gives you that depth if you're brave enough to pick a lane. So typically, what I've observed is in the US, you don't win initially just by going broad, but you win by going narrow and deep in a market that can support it. And then you go on expanding from there. Okay, so moving on to the fourth rule. A lot of things that people call dead still work if done in a US native way. Classic example is cold calling. From India, we've all heard and experienced this, like cold calling is dead. Nobody picks up. It's not working. On ground, calling just worked perfectly fine. And in fact, is a big channel for a lot of early stage companies in US. And to do that, we also hired an agency in the US to experiment with this. And we started getting real demos, like demos that converted into some sort of pipe. So it's not that just calling worked, or it's not that email or LinkedIn stopped working. It's just that calls layered on top of that changed the game. So the rule isn't really calling is dead, but the rule is like, yeah, non-contextual, poor calling is dead. The US isn't allergic to calls. In fact, it runs on calling, but it's just allergic to poor calling. And good calls still help you move pipeline. Cool. So that summarizes the four rules of the first pillar, GTM realities. We go to the next one.
Maybe I have one quick question in between. You told that we definitely need to show up consistently in order to meet the threshold, right? Because do you have any experience like, hey, this is the minimum time, something like that, or else like wherever your ICP are, you definitely need to show up in the events or something consistently is what you are recommending? Like, how do you take that?
Yes. So it would vary on different industries, so I can't really quote a specific number. But so what matters is every vertical or every industry would have a small group of insiders. that would work with them, right? And they would typically go to most of these events, the flagship events at least. And your aim is to get in front of them enough number of times for them to recognize you. I would love to say this is the magical number, but honestly, there's none. It's just about being consistent and showing up enough times until you start getting signals from the market that oh yeah, we've seen you, we've seen you around, and I relate to you.
Okay. Tejas, you can provide your questions in the chat column. I can provide you the details in the comment section itself. Once we can curate all the questions, and I'll just head it over to PB. And yeah, I think we can get started. Folks,
Okay.
You just 1 second, PB. You can send all the questions in the question section itself, team, and we will curate all the questions and ask to PV at the last, because we don't want to, since we have very limited period, we want to finish this, and we'll have all the questions at the last.
All right. Yeah, let's go on, move to the next pillar. Pillar 2, trust and relationships. And this surprised me the most. US GTM is far more people driven than your dashboards will ever show. And I experienced this firsthand. The relationships, how important relationships are, how important people driven marketing are, it was very evident. And I'm talking about everything that I'm talking today is in the context of mid market and lower enterprise motion, or even enterprise motion. PLG can still be slightly different. Okay. So let's get into the rules of this pillar. Rule number 1: small talk is not small. From India, and I used to make this mistakes so many times. I think let's just save time and skip the chit chat. Just directly get to the point. Like, why waste time, right? Get to business. On ground, I realized that those first 2-3 minutes, like, how was your Thanksgiving? Any interesting stories? They aren't just fillers, but they are the onboarding flow for trust. They are implicitly deciding, essentially the prospects are implicitly deciding in those 2-3 minutes, do I like this person? Do I feel safe being honest with them? Do I want this relationship in my world? If you skip the small talk, you skip the warm up, and everything starts to feel cold and transactional. And it's not just in business, but it's just the way they live. It's the culture. So small talk isn't a detour, but it's the main road into trust, and can go a long way in establishing relationships and trust. The second rule: generosity compounds like crazy. Simple things can do some magic, like making a useful intro, sharing a playbook or a template, not the ones we see kind of on LinkedIn just for clickbait, but genuine ones. Giving a specific genuine compliment, unsolicited. Making your champion the hero in your story. For example, I'll give you an example. Like, after a panel, if someone said something sharp, I just go ahead and say, that line about X was really sharp, and I'm going to steal it. No pitch, just a real compliment. And 90% of the time, the response would be thanks and a genuine interest from their side on what are you working on. The doors open. It was not, I was not forcing myself into it. And I've seen others do as well. Like, just be genuine and be generous. And with customers, when we made them the hero, they did not just stay longer with us, but they pulled us into internal channels, the kind of intros they made, the groups that we had never reached alone. So a specific compliment is often much better than your best elevator pitch. Make your champion the hero, and they will walk you into rooms you cannot enter alone. Okay, let's go into the third rule. The straight talk builds trust. two things: boundaries and your word. In India, we think saying I'm available 24/7 kind of proves commitment. But in the US, like I kept hearing, hey, I'm out of office for the next few days, or I cannot take calls after 7. Nobody goes and thinks, oh, are you serious? In fact, they'll go ahead and say, got it. Thanks for being clear. Clear boundaries signal self-respect. People who respect themselves are easier to trust. And second, your word. Like bugs, slips, experiments failing, they're all normal. But what generally kills the trust is broken promises. Like you say you will have it Friday and then go silent, or you're over promising just to close a deal, or you're hiding some bad news until it explodes. I've seen customers forgive real mistakes because we were honest and early. And I've seen relationships die on one casually broken commitment. They'll forgive your bugs, but they won't forgive your broken word. It's a very inherent cultural thing there. Okay, cool. I think with this, we are probably at the end of pillar 2, the 3 rules, important rules around trust and relationships. These are all the invisible rules. We can move on to the next pillar, communication rules. Okay. Now this is, I love this. This is where a lot of remote GTM quietly kind of breaks. And not because our product is wrong, but because the way we speak and write doesn't really match how US buyers process that information. Rule number 1 in the pillar, say the thing in the first line. Like a typical email from our side generally sounds like, okay, hope you're doing well. I know you're busy. Quick intro about us. We've helped X and Y, blah, 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 blah. By the time we get to the point, they've already closed the email or closed the tab. And this, you can see how it also translates to real life conversation. But instead, what generally works far better is hey, Sarah, like 2 reasons for this note. I saw you're hiring security engineers and we cut onboarding time by 40% or whatever for teams like yours. If that's mildly relevant, I'll send a 2-page summary. If not, just tell me and I'll close the loop. Simple, direct, especially even more useful in in-person situations. And it's just that in the US, direct is respectful. I've seen this not just in business, but I've had so many personal instances where vague and roundabout feels like you're wasting their time. You're just being rude instead of respecting their time. So direct is not rude, but vague is rude there. And if they have to hunt for your point, you've already lost. You moved on. They moved on. Again, a very important point when it comes to communication there. The second rule, one sharp idea will beat 5 fuzzy ones. Typical pitch, at least the way we used to make initially was, we are an end-to-end platform, does ABC across the life cycle for Y, X, Y, Z, blah, 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 and it would go on. To them, all of that is just static noise. But instead, if the moment we started making it very simple and sharp, like I'll give you an example of something that we did at events. Like with Sprinto, your mid-market GRC professionals stop chasing teams for audit and evidence collection. And that's it, like honing on that. Or example, RevOps team use us to see real pipeline health without Excel Olympics. So clarity is about communicating that one sharp idea rather than trying to be everything for everyone. It isn't about dumbing down, but it's just about respecting how fast their brain is moving. And if they can't place you in the first 3 or 5 seconds, you tend to lose interest. It's the reality of today's world. So don't send them a puzzle, send them a picture. Okay, the third rule, moving on, and this is true especially at events and dinner, the third rule that I'm about to say, in person. It's totally okay to pitch in the US as long as you're upfront that you are pitching. Inherently, we are very skeptical and shy when it comes to doing that. And we would do 10 minutes of soft talk and then sneak the pitch somehow in the conversation from our side, right? And that's not appreciated well. They think of this as snake oil. But something like very direct or being honest upfront is often appreciated more. Like, can I be direct? You can just say, can I be direct? Like, I build X for Y teams. If you're ever thinking about building this or fixing this problem, I would love 10 minutes to show what you're doing. If not, no worries at all. I mean, the reason that also helps being honest is you're being transparent about your intent and you're giving them a clean out. Like, they're not obligated. If it's not of interest, you can get back later. You're not pretending this isn't business or fake, but they really respect clear intent over fake modesty. So yeah, like, you can be direct. You'd say, I'd love 10 minutes to show you what we are building. Can beat anything when you're trying to just beat around the bush. Instead of dancing around it, just go straight to the point.
How did you figure it out? Like, a lot of errors?
Yeah. More mistakes, always more mistakes than successes. Here's what teaches you. More failures. All right. Moving to the next one, the fourth rule of this pillar. Extremely, extremely important culturally as well. They want to feel empowered and not pushed. I mean, everyone knows that US is the epicenter of buying software SaaS. So they are drowning in asks. Like, everyone is asking them something or the other. But the moment they think that your message feels like some pressure, they kind of pull away. So what works better is generally giving them control and not the pressure, which is having a very clear ask, giving them an option for an easy way to say no, giving them simpler options. For example, you can always say, if this is relevant, we can send you a 2-page summary or do a 20-minute call this or next week. Simple asks. But if the timing's off, just say later and I'll check back in a quarter. So this shows you have respect for their time. You are a professional, you're not desperate, and that they are in control of the decision or the pace at which you want to move. So our job is not to wrestle control from them, but rather to guide the decision. And that empowerment is enormous there. Like, make the ask extremely clear and the decision would feel like it's theirs. And empowered buyers always buy more. Cool. With that, I think we wrap up pillar 3. Yeah.
We can take a break. I can actually have some quick questions. We have in our folks having a lot of questions over here as well. One question stood up was, being in India, can we crack US itself without going over there?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's no reason why not, but your chances increase. So if you're, especially in the early days, right, when you're trying to figure out a lot of things, my recommendation is at least one founder should move to the US and be close to where the market is, if US is your primary market. But can you really get started without being there? Absolutely, man. That's what we did initially as well. Like, we got the early momentum while we were still here. And then we wanted to turn up the heat is when we moved.
Got it. And when did you start investing brand at Sprinto? Like, considering your journey from $500,000 to the current stage?
I think it was a very conscious decision to do that from, at least to be mindful of that from day one. Now, see, brand is also a very abused word. Like, everyone perceives that very differently. For example, we got to our LinkedIn followers of around 300K in 3 years. Now, is that like a fairly good, is that being called like a successful brand? I'm not sure. Right? They're very, very different definitions, but we were especially mindful of some of the initiatives that we did. or that we took up from day one, that we need to invest in brand. But the power of brand, especially in that market, in the North American market, was an absolute 180-degree revelation for me on the power of brand in that market versus in other regions. So I would definitely recommend investing like from day one. Brand allows you to have that unfair advantage, but brand does not necessarily mean spending on billboards. But there are a lot of other ways or different ways in which one should think about it without having to spend millions of dollars.
Got it. Cool. I think we can get started with the next part. Just a second. Yeah, I think we can get started with the next pillar.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, we'll continue and keep the questions flowing. It will help me also improve
the flow
or structure the conversation better. So please do keep them flowing. Okay, the next one, extremely important and a big one, positioning and value. I know everyone, it's a no-brainer when it comes to how important that pillar is. But what I'm going to talk about is the underlying fabric or the nuances in that pillar. So positioning and value, this is where a lot of good products also underperform in the US. Let's go to the first rule there. They're not really buying features, but what they are really buying is less risk. What we tend to do often is we automate X, we integrate with Y, we do Z and much more. But on the other side, especially in mid-market and enterprise, the buyer, what they are really thinking is, if I choose this and it blows up, how bad do I look? Does this make my world more predictable or more chaotic? Am I going to lose my job? Deals started moving once we, or at least conversations started moving when we shifted from here's everything that we can do, like with that kind of a pitch, to here's how we make sure you don't get surprised. Like the visibility, the guardrails, the rollback plan if something goes wrong, logos, warm intros, being compliant, the kind of support that we have. All of it is really about answering these objections in their head that, can I trust you not to wreck my life? That's what they're really hoping to get an answer on. So in those markets, like, your real product is reduced risk with proof and not necessarily your feature grade. Okay, so the second rule, time and control are huge value drivers there. It's not just about, we save you 5 hours, because that's the pitch we are used to saying. But it's more about, you don't have to chase 5 teams to get this done, or you don't have to meet 5 different teams to get a data. Like, you can see things in one place without having to wait on anyone. You can decide when this runs, when this stops. That feeling of, I'm back in control. I'm back in control of the messy part of my job is massive. And the more you can show less chaos, more visibility, more control, more empowerment, fewer dependencies, the more valuable you will tend to become. Okay. So in essence, what I'm trying to just say is you're not just saving time, but you are trying to give them their day back in literal sense. You are more control. The more control you give over their mess, the more perceived value in their eyes. Okay, so let's go to the third rule in this. And this is very, very US specific coded, culture coded in their society itself, which is they're a SOP driven culture. Like, everything is extremely disciplined, organized, and there is a standard operating procedure or rules that they expect for for each and everything that they do, even in their lives, in their personal life. So that's how they are wired, right? And they are buying your process as much as your product. Their questions aren't really just, does this feature work? Okay, but what they're also asking is, if we say yes, what happens next? Is this 6 months of chaos or a clean rollout that we are looking at? So when you show up with a simple 30, 60, 90-day plan, or clear owners on both the sides, milestones, success criterias, things like those things. Like, what you're saying is essentially, we've done this before, we know our shit. We won't make you look stupid internally. Okay. That SOP clarity is extreme value because it reduces risk. It gives them talking points even internally and makes them feel safer and smarter internally. So don't just demo features, but demo what the next 90 days with you will look like. That helps them build that safety guard. So your implementation plan is part of your product. If your process is fuzzy, your value is also fuzzy there. Something to just be mindful of. And most of these are just culturally driven things, right? The fourth rule, there's a lot of talk on this, but they buy known categories, period. And then they would compare you inside the category. Okay. You will often hear, are you more like X or Y? Are you like in our case, are you a GRC, SIM, or what exactly? If you answer a long paragraph about being a brand new thing, they're mentally checked out. So what would work better is like anchor them in a known legible box, which is a known category, and then explain your twist. For example, think of us as a lighter, faster alternative to X for teams that care about the specific problem or outcome, right? Or, if you're comparing X and Y, we are usually the choice for teams who want X without the pain Y. Some of these frameworks can be used, but you don't need to be 100% unique all the time. They need you to be legible and clearly better for someone specific. So I'm not, by the way, I'm saying category creation is absolutely cool. And if you can pull it off, amazing for branding and funding and all the other things. But in day-to-day sales, like, you still have to fit on a shelf in their head. And which shelf do you want to go to is important. So if they don't know which shelf to put you on, it's difficult for them to pick you up. So be legible first and then be legendary. All right. Let's go to the last pillar. I feel we are also getting closer to the time. Oh, I can talk on and on about these things, like the culture and buyer mindset. This is the operating system underneath everything else. It's the same product, same deck. But if you ignore this layer, like, everything will start feeling off to a US buyer. Okay, the first rule here. The culture is far more tolerant of failed attempts than we think. Like in India, failure is a scar, like it's a stain. But in the US, like, you'll keep hearing things like, he tried to build something in X domain, did not work, but he's sharp as hell. Okay, net, that's a positive signal. It's a badge of honor. It's not seen negatively. So even in the GTM, how does it apply? Like, you don't have to pretend that everything you've done was perfect. You can feel absolutely comfortable saying, we tried X last year, it didn't work, but here's what we changed. And you can talk about experiments and bets, not just polished success stories. Be genuine. Okay. Bold and honest is respected. If you're safe and bland, you'll just disappear into the noise. So a failed attempt is often a badge, not a scar. And bold and honest will beat safe and invisible. Okay. The second, we can go to the second rule. Recognition kind of drives behavior. Very similar motivations there as well, like titles, LinkedIn clout, being the person who did X at Y. All of this matters. Okay. So when your story is like, here's how this security leader turned compliance from a tax into a differentiator, you're not just selling ROI, you are selling a better story for your champion. And, basically, the practical levers that you can leverage is making them the hero of the case study, inviting them to speak on your webinar, or highlighting their impact to their boss when given an opportunity, giving them early or access or design partner status. It's just human nature. Like, people move faster when it also moves their story, not just their KPIs. Everyone craves recognition, and it's no different, but it's extremely significant there. So you're not just selling software, you're selling a better LinkedIn line for them. And recognition travels much farther than a 10% discount there. Okay. Third rule, there's a specific emotional contract around work. And the patterns that I noticed there was, work is important, but for a large number of people, work is a means to a good life and not the whole identity. Weekends, vacation, kids, events, they're all real and very important in their lives. They are tolerant of honest mistakes, but they're allergic to kind of bullshit. For us, what that means is, we don't need to glorify 11 p.m. calls as our selling point, or marking everything urgent and ignoring their out of office. When something breaks, just say it straight, and say what you're doing about it. They will most likely forgive a broken feature a lot faster than they will forgive feeling misled. So, the thing to remember is they'll forgive bugs faster than they'll forgive being lied to. So respect their life and their truth, and you'll get a lot more rope when things go wrong. You'll have them on your side. Okay, I think coming to the last rule of this pillar, it's the mindset piece, which shows up everywhere you do, from contracts to design to SOPs and everything. Freedom and choice are deep cultural defaults there. It's a very DIY culture, like I choose my own path culture. People don't just like options. They get uneasy when they are being boxed into something. Okay. Like, you'll see it when you talk a lot about lock-ins, preference. They'll have a preference for starting small, or they'll want admin controls and a clean way to exit. But if our GTM starts feeling like, it's all or nothing, there are forced commitments, heavy implementation, no easy way out, we are fighting the culture. Instead, if it says here's a safe way to start, you have everything in control. Expand it if you like it. You're just flowing with their culture. You're giving them better control. It's the same thing in products, like giving them enough knobs and dials or clear on-off switches. One thing which we are all culprit of, which is, don't hide everything behind talk to sales. That sense of agency is what makes them comfortable saying yes. So we have to respect that culture. It's not just personal, but even at work. And if your deal will start feeling like they are losing freedom, we've already lost the deal. Okay. I think we have covered all the 5 pillars that we wanted to. I know it was a lot to go over, and I apologize, but with the time at hand, I could only cover or go over this at a very high level. If there is interest, I'm happy to go over in details in one of the future sessions on some of these pillars as well. But let me close with this. Like, for years, I tried to crack the US sitting far away. We grew, and we grew phenomenally well as well. But 2 years on ground compressed 5 years of learning into one intense chapter for me. And what I realized is, it's not just about marketing the visible playbooks, but also about understanding these invisible rules and how trust is built, how communication lands, what value actually means in their world, how culture shapes decisions, and where you place your chips in a huge, noisy market. So if you take even 2 or 3 of these ideas and can bake them into your next 90 days, I think I'm fairly confident your US motion will start to feel very different. for mid-market and enterprise. And if you want to stress test your veg or anything, I'm happy to jam one-on-one with a few of you, of course, later when we can. But thanks so much for hanging out with me. And I genuinely hope this helps you not just grow in the US, but actually win there. Thanks, everyone.
Folks, that is PV for you. Uh, See, the level of nuances which he touched can be only be done when someone goes deeper into the buying journey, understand what their actual nuances involved in their interactions and stuff. So these kind of lessons or sessions, I'm not sure. I haven't listened. So this is definitely helpful for us, PV. Thank you so much for sharing all the learnings which you had received. But I have we can close up with like 3 or 4 questions, like which is being provided with by the folks who have joined. I'll shoot the first one. Uh, what's your thought on participating in expensive industry events, the likes hosted by AWS, Snowflakes, etc.? How do you measure impact or justify spends from the industry participation, especially when you stay consistency is the key?
So, great question. I think what we do see is there's a fine line there, and you have to balance it out well. Uh, so I would love to say a generic answer here, but a lot depends also on your context, your stage, where you are in your journey, and what are your priorities. I'll give you an example. When I started at Sprinto, in the very next couple of next few quarters, we realized that we were coming from behind. There are large players already in the market, and we weren't able to move the needle as much as we had liked to, even with all the motions that we were doing. And we knew that it's time to make ourselves known or announce ourselves in that domain in the US. And it was extremely important for us to do that. So we ended up taking a large booth at SaaStr. And this was just the year after COVID. And it was almost a 100K plus kind of overall expense for us. And we knew that we aren't going to really get 100K kind of a revenue, or nowhere even close to that kind of revenue. But what it allowed to do was create a perception in the market, which is, if we can afford to be here and at this scale, we must have something which is working for us. We must be a player who's growing really, really fast. And that perception created ripple effects for us. It was not immediately visible from the next 2-3 days of the event, but as we started further down the quarters, we started hearing about these things from the market. Oh, that we had seen you there. You were doing some engagement or activation on ground, which was really nice, etc., etc. Right. So it's not an easy decision, honestly, but your leadership needs to be strongly aligned to this. Without their backing, it's impossible to almost take any of these calls. So in general, I feel if you can, like at RSA, a similar RSA is the largest cybersecurity event in the US. There we did not bother to like have a massive booth because we could not afford it. It will cost like $250,000 or $500,000 just to have the booth. And we decided not to. We were happy just being there in the startup arena, which was a smaller booth, lower cost, primarily because they had enough footfall for us to know that we'll meet enough people and still get our name out. So I'm not answering this directly, but it is very contextual to the stage, and I'm happy to build a framework for it.
Yeah. And how did you convince the founder?
That's for another day.
Cool. And the other one is
okay. I didn't realize what my battery is just about to.
Yeah, you can.
I hope we can cover a couple of questions and then.
Yeah. Is it better for a business to adopt GTM strategy in-house or go for an individual service in target countries like USA? Like you clearly mentioned, for outbound, you you were hired agency at US, right?
Yes.
So yeah.
So I'll tell you what we did at Sprinto. Right, when I joined, there was no team we had to build from scratch, but it was absolutely important that we have the momentum built because there are real goals that we still had to meet, and so it made perfect sense to get agencies to get started with, and keep building on your momentum and build the foundations while you're still looking to build your team. Now it's a very personal choice for leaders. Like there are parts of the puzzle which I still feel we must do in house, and it's just a personal preference. And there are other parts of the puzzle where I feel it is absolutely fine if done through external agencies who are the experts in that field. In fact, we've also leveraged Pipe Rocket's agency for some time in our at Sprinto as well. It's been on and off, but yeah, we did.
Yeah. Thanks
but
for the mention.
Coming to US and India, I feel there are certain functions which are just because of the number of cycles that US has seen, the maturity of that, the number of success cycles that US has seen. There are certain functions which are more mature in US than in India, and I would any day prefer to have some agencies or even people from there than trying to rely locally for things like product marketing uh, and even outbound kind of things. I feel no brainer, especially when you're trying to learn from the market or are trying to feel like you are a local, to just leverage some expertise there. The agency culture is significantly bigger there in US and India. And so it's easy to find people who've been there, done that there as well.
Got it. Yeah. Because I've heard a lot of folks telling me that for anything which is service related, like the paid or SEO, they usually go for an agency when compared to what India
Yes,
is doing.
absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
there the culture of leveraging, because it's extremely the cost effectiveness of hiring a person there versus leveraging an agency. The math just works in the favor of an agency there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And another question is, I think let's have this as a last one. First 10 customers struggles are with the credibility, or first 50 customers challenges are with the scale, established channel that you give predictable pipeline. First 100 customers like sustainable growth. How do you address these problems? Like we can break
The
down into
first, yeah. So if it's SMB, like the first 50 customers, yeah, the founder has to sell. There's no workaround. There's no predictability. There's no motion. You're still trying to figure out who your customer is, what resonates with them, what narrative, what story resonates. So thinking of building like a predictable motion early on, before that threshold number of customers, I feel that's not a wise decision. You can experiment with external folks, but not necessarily build that motion. The first 50 in SMB and the first at least 15-20 in mid-market and enterprise, I feel should be front-loaded through by the founder. Hustle, get warm-ups. There's enough network now of Indians in the US that you can leverage. I'm fairly confident if you raise money, like you'll find some connection here or there. Try and hustle your way. Just be there in the events or leverage your investors or something. But yeah, there's no alternative to that. I feel predictability, building predictable engine should definitely be the ultimate goal, but should come once you have clarity on the ICP, the problem statement, the value you're delivering, the narrative, and have seen at least few successful cycles from start to the end, where you can confidently say that, yes, this motion works. And that usually comes only after the 15 SM, maybe 30, 40 in SMB and 10, 15, 15, 20 in mid-market enterprise.
Cool. I think there is a lot to take for sure. And definitely people would have more questions. Folks, I would definitely request you to reach out to PV directly in case if you have any further questions or wanted to chat down the nuances which we involve. Apart from this, thank you so much, PV. I think it's an incredible session. We had 85 plus attendees in the show, which is the highest till now. And about 90% of them stayed back till the end. which shows the level of clarity and the quality of the session which you delivered right now. So thank you so much for that. It's a pleasure hosting you again.
Thank you so much, Praveen. My pleasure. And guys, I hope something was useful. If it was, I hope you go for the win instead of just momentum in US. All the best. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys.